Murphy.
Mr. President, there's a housing affordability crisis in New South Wales. Research by the Committee for Sydney has revealed that housing in Sydney is the sixth most unaffordable in the world, more expensive than in New York, Los Angeles or London. The median Sydney house price is now more than 13 times the median income, and rent across Australia rose more between September 2020 and July 2023 than it did in the entire 13 years prior. This housing crisis is hitting regional and rural New South Wales harder than in Sydney. A recent report found that 9 out of the 10 suburbs that had the biggest rental cost increases in 2022 were in rural and regional areas. Natural disasters in recent years have decimated housing stock in some regional communities, such as Maria on the north New South Wales south coast. This has driven up rents, leaving many, including young families, homeless or bouncing between crisis accommodation. The Labor government's taking commendable steps to resolve this housing crisis by providing the New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation and Aboriginal Housing Office an expanded and accelerated development pathway for large social and affordable housing projects. The government's encouraging larger developments and getting them built faster. The fundamental issue, however, in my view, is that housing in Australia is still considered by many as an investment, a steady source of profit, instead of the human right that it is. To fix the problem, we need to fundamentally rethink the way we approach housing. Access to adequate housing has long been recognised as a human right in international law, such as in Article 11 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. As a practical matter, almost everyone would acknowledge that access to stable and secure housing is fundamental to proper participation in the economy and society in an advanced democracy like we have in Australia. If we consider housing to be both a human right and an essential precondition to participation in society, we must consider disrupting the dynamic in which the provision of housing is left up to the vagaries of the free market and turbocharged by tax deductions. For example, it is long overdue that we establish a Human Rights Act for New South Wales that would recognise housing as a human right. Further, we must acknowledge that there is no inherent right for someone to make profit off another human right, or for an investor to pass on all of the costs of an investment to their tenants while enjoying all of the economic benefits. The power imbalance between landlords and renters must be reduced with stronger tenancy rights and protections. Tax law should be reformed to reduce the rewards for commercial landlords with large property portfolios and instead encourage them to release properties back onto the market to be bought by owner-occupiers or mum and dad investors. In my view, an upper limit should be implemented on the number of properties that an individual can negatively gear, and we should have a cap on the total amount that can be claimed as housing-related tax deductions by those investors. Providers of low-cost social housing could be exempted. Requirements for developers, in my view, should include a proportion of social housing and even a proportion of government housing in new developments. These are just some of the ideas that I think ought to be considered. They're merely my personal views, but it is clear that creative solutions are going to be required to address the worsening housing crisis in our state and to ensure that housing truly is recognised as a human right and one that's accessible to all.